for a GPU around $200, the Arc A750 or the RX 6600 might spring to mind. But which one out of these graphics cards is the better choice, and more importantly, which is the better value? To find out, I've tested them both at 1080p and 1440p with ray tracing as well, to see which one of these graphics cards is the better choice. On paper and in price, both the Arc A750 and RX 6600 are very close. They both have 8GB of VRAM and they're both marketed for 1080p gaming. They also cost $200 on the new market. But where the differences start is the Arc A750 has a 256-bit memory bus, whereas the RX 6600 only has a 128-bit. But the latter is also way more efficient. And I know before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, a few of you might be thinking, an Intel Arc card, seriously, might you recommend one of these? And yeah, why not? Because after constant driver updates from Intel, they are actually a very compelling buy right now, and I believe them to be pretty decent value. And you can see that in a video which I made up there or there, I can never remember where YouTube puts it. But how does it stack up to the competition, like this RX 6600? And more importantly, which one out of these GPUs is the better buy and which one's the better value? To find out, I've tested them both at 1080p and 1440p with both rasterization and ray tracing results in my testing PC, which has a Ryzen 5 7600, 32GB of 6200MHz CL32 DDR5 memory, a 2TB Western Digital SN770 NVMe SSD, and an MSI Tomahawk X670E motherboard. Both GPUs have been left at their stock out-of-the-box settings and resizable bar has been enabled. The driver version for the AMD graphics card today is 24.6.1, and for the Intel GPU, they're way too long to remember off the top of my head, but it will be down there. So without any more talking, let's see how both these graphics cards stack up against each other. At 1080p, Cyberpunk 2077 sees a win for the Arc A750, as the RX 6600 was trailing it by 11% with the average frame rate, and just overall, the Arc A750 sees a pretty comfortable win here. And raising this up to 1440p does see the Arc A750 stretch its legs even further, as it got a much better average and 1% low frame rate compared to the AMD graphics card. So if you wanted to play Cyberpunk 2077 on a $200 new GPU, the Arc A750 is objectively a better bet here. Conversely, this is flipped on its head with Fortnite, as the AMD graphics card sees a 29% performance advantage at 1080p and a 23% performance advantage at 1440p. Also, the 1% lows are looking much better on the Radeon card here, so if you're a competitive gamer, especially with Fortnite, the RX GPU is definitely the one you should pick up here. But to be honest, the Arc A750 is still getting decent performance, but the RX 6600 is just getting better performance. At 1080p, Hogwarts Legacy is performing in favour of the Radeon card, but when that is switched up to 1440p, it switches to the Intel GPU. This is probably down to either the high memory bandwidth thanks to that 256-bit memory bus, or maybe some CPU bottleneck being alleviated, as with Arc GPUs, there is more CPU overhead with the drivers. But either way, either one of these graphics cards is going to be totally fine. If you were playing at 1080p, I'd probably recommend the RX 6600, but if you were playing at 1440p, the Arc A750 is the GPU for you. Jedi Survivor surprised me today, as this is an AMD sponsored title, but the Arc A750 basically just runs away with it. Because at 1080p, it does only slightly outperform the RX 6600, and it does get the same 1% low as well. But switching up to 1440p does see playable performances on both graphics cards, but the Arc A750 has a much better 1% low and 41 FPS compared to 34. It might not seem like a lot, but when you get in this low of a frame rate to begin with, 41 is certainly a lot better than 34. So yeah, the Arc A750 is my pick for Jedi Survivor. I'm pretty sure Starfield is another AMD sponsored title, and at 1080p you can kind of see why, as the RX 6600 does get better performance, even though the 1% low is only slightly better than the Arc GPU. 1440p does see, well, basically the same performance, with that average frame rate. So just like the rest of the games, the performance, I guess you could say it is slightly better with the higher resolution. At both resolutions, the Arc A750 takes a win in Spider-Man. At Full HD, to be honest, you're probably not going to notice that much of a difference between both these graphics cards. Maybe with that 1% low, as the Arc A750 did get 12 more FPS here. But at 1440p, you do see quite a big change in performance. That is because the Arc A750 got almost 80 FPS on average, whereas the RX 6600 failed to even get 60. This is a massive performance delta between both these graphics cards, and yeah, the Arc A750 is just much better at this resolution. God of War used to be a massive pain point for Arc, as it is a DirectX 11 title, but at 1080p there isn't much separating these GPUs with the average frame rate. That is because the RX 6600 got a very nice stable frame rate overall, as the 1% low only trailed the average by just 10 FPS. Whereas the Arc A750 got 55 FPS for the 1% low. Where we do see a massive change though is 1440p. Here the CPU is playing less of a part, especially for the Arc GPU, so the 1% low was much closer to the average frame rate here. Looking at the RX 6600, and it does trail the Arc A750 by a full 18%, which is quite a huge performance margin. And it's something we're kind of getting used to at 1440p here. The AMD GPU does get more than 60 FPS on average, which is not too bad I suppose, but the Intel GPU is just running away with it. Rasterized performance at both 1080p and 1440p today was very close between both of these graphics cards, but starting off with Full HD, and the RX 6600 does take the crown here by about 10%. This number was massively boosted by the competitive games, because in Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege and Counter-Strike 2, the RX 6600 kind of ran away with it here. I know what this is down to, and it's the lower driver overhead of AMD graphics cards. Out of the three manufacturers, AMD has the lowest driver overhead, which means when you're CPU bound, you will be getting more performance, as from what we've seen today. Because in competitive games, you are going to be CPU bound more than GPU bound, and this is where AMD does really start to show its legs here. And in fact, when it comes to this, out of Nvidia, Intel and AMD, Arc graphics cards do have the worst driver overhead from what I've seen, so this isn't going to help at 1080p in competitive titles. If we shift on to the rest of the 1080p results, the Arc A750 does start to see some wins. Cyberpunk and Spider-Man are notable wins for the Arc GPU right here, and this is kind of what you see at 1440p as well, as the Arc GPU does start to run away with it, especially in AAA titles, where it gets decisive wins in Cyberpunk, Jedi Survivor, and even in God of War, a game that was notoriously bad on Intel Arc about 9 months ago, sees a massive win at Quad HD. And the reason why I think the Arc A750 nets an overall win at the high resolution is because of the 256-bit memory bus. Thus, you're going to be getting higher memory bandwidth, which means the GPU should perform better at 1440p, and today it does, as the 128-bit memory bus of the RX 6600 does start to kind of let it down at the higher resolution, and perhaps the stronger just raw compute performance of the A750 is starting to pull away here. Also, the higher the resolution, the less the CPU matters, so we're going to see less of a difference between the driver overhead issue of the Arc GPUs as well. Switching on ray tracing, and this is where we see a massive difference between both these graphics cards, as the Arc A750 absolutely trounces the AMD GPU here. The AMD card only gets one win, and that is Jedi Survivor at 1080p, because the rest of it, the Arc A750 absolutely ran away with it at both 1080p and 1440p. And dare I say, if you were to do a few settings tweaking, maybe even enabling XeSS, the Arc A750 could be a decent budget ray tracing card, even though I don't really recommend it for the most part, but it's still a possibility, where on the AMD GPU, it really isn't. So depending on what type of game you're going to be playing, either one of these graphics cards will suit you more than the other. If you're an esports gamer, the RX 6600 is objectively the best bet here, as the lower driver overhead of Radeon graphics cards and just the high performance at 1080p with competitive games means this is the graphics card I'd recommend. Conversely, if you wanted to play AAA games first, the Arc A750 and its extra power and high memory bandwidth may be beneficial to you. Here you'll be getting more performance, particularly at 1440p and especially when you enable ray tracing. Even though I don't enable RT on both of these graphics cards, the Arc A750 definitely runs away with it, and I would consider it acceptable but not ideal. But with the RX 6600, this should not even be considered for ray tracing at all. But I suspect other factors such as efficiency, drivers, and just tech in general will influence your buying decision more. If you went with the AMD graphics card, you would enjoy much better power efficiencies. This only consumed about 100 watts in my testing today, which was almost half of the Arc A750, which is kind of wild, come to think of it. And in my opinion, the AMD driver set is much stronger than Intel, particularly with the software, as AMD does have an upper hand here and Intel Arc control's not really that good. And of course, you get lower driver overhead with Radeon GPUs, as I've probably said like 15 million times in this video. Conversely, with the Arc A750, you get better workstation performance, as I do actually use this for 4K video editing. I work with Sony 10-bit 422 footage, and the Arc A750 has been an absolute treat for that. Also, Arc GPUs can leverage the Tensor cores to use XeSS. This is an AI accelerated upscaler which will perform better than AMD's FSR. So if you needed more performance in a pinch at 1440p, XeSS will look better than FSR, which are detailed in a video which you can watch up there. So this is why both of these graphics cards get my recommendation, and if you want to pick either one of these up, there will be linked below with my Amazon affiliate links. You will be helping out the channel if you pick up any of these graphics cards through these links, as I do make a small commission at no extra cost to you. And hopefully by now, if you're looking to spend $200 on a new graphics card, you know which one of these GPUs is best for you. But if you want to save some money and potentially get a more powerful graphics card, there is a video up there. I think that's going to be a good one. With that being said, thanks for watching.